All right, in this video, what we're going to do is we will look at some of the exchanges that take place within an economy and then why people make those decisions or what sort of analysis takes place within individuals, within societies, within governments that economists use to analyze decisions. So the first thing that we're going to look at is exchanges that take place in an economy. So we're going to take kind of an overly simplified view of an economic model to sort of explain some decisions that are made by the actors within an economy. So we're going to break down the economy into really two players. On one side, we have individuals, or we'll call households, right? Which would be like the me and the you and things like that, right? And then on the other side, we have firms or organizations that really produce things. They're kind of the production, manufacturers of stuff, right? And so individuals are these kind of players on this side and firms are on this side. And some of you might say, well, you're missing some stuff. You're missing like foreign countries and you're missing like different types of markets, and you're missing the government. You're missing, yeah, that's true. But in this simple example of what we're going to call the circular flow model, we're just going to look at these simple players for right now. And so one of the exchanges that takes place, and the one that we're most familiar with, and the one that we'll spend a majority of this course doing, is looking at how households exchange certain things with firms. Okay? So one of the most common ones that we're familiar with is when you interact with a firm, most of the time what you're thinking about is you spend money. You spend money at a business. You spend money at a store. You spend money in a company, something like that. You give this firm money, and they in return give you goods and services, right? You're the buyer. They're the seller, right? You demand. They supply. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of our time. And this is what's called the product market. So we'll talk about the nature of the product market. We'll talk about supply and demand, how prices are determined. We'll talk about how markets are competitive or lack competition. We'll talk about monopolies and perfect competition. Talk about all of that good stuff. But there's this other half. This is a circular flow model. There's a cycle of exchanges that takes place. Where do these firms get the workers in order to produce the stuff that they have? Where do the people in individual households, where do they get the money to buy these things? Well, they got to get this money from somewhere, and firms give that money to people oftentimes, right, in the form of something like wages. All right, so the firms get money and they spend money on work, on workers, on machines, right? And so this is oftentimes our labor that we provide. Sometimes it's capital. Sometimes it's resources. We'll call that land, right? So land, labor, and capital is given to firms, and in return, individual households get wages. And this becomes the circular flow model. So a portion of our course, we're going to look at where firms are not the seller, but they are the buyer. What are they buying? What are they buying here, right? What is this one? Well, they're buying land, labor, and capital, right? And so they demand. They're the demand curve for land, labor, and capital. And over here, these are the sellers, right? They supply land, labor, and capital. And this is called the resource or the factor market. All right, and we'll take a look at exchanges that take place in this resource or factor market. And there will be different economies that choose to kind of have this function, a little bit differently. So there's economies that will function in much this same way, where it's just free individuals and free firms deciding how this circular flow goes, like what's made, who gets it, how much people are weighed. And that sort of decision, that sort of process is really known as the free market. All right, so a free market economy is one that functions with just these two players. There's a different one where you get rid of firms, you get rid of individual households, and it's really just the government that runs everything. And those are called command economies, right? So you could have the one end where it's really just private individuals, private property, private businesses. That's what runs the economy. Or you go the other side and there's no private. It's all public. It's all the public sphere. It's all the common good. It's a command economy. But most economies are somewhere in between those two, where we have mixed economies, where you do put the government in the middle here, and they have some role, right? Some money goes to the government. Some firms have to pay, wages or taxes to the government. Some land is owned by the government. Some goods and services are bought by the government. And the government, in return, has expenditures that go to firms and go to households. And so it just depends upon how big those arrows are that go to the government. And those are really the different kind of levels of, free versus command or mixed economies that we could have. So the last thing that I wanted to do is go through, okay, you have these individuals, how do they make decisions? How do you make economic decisions? Right? How do we go about assessing what is a good decision, what is not a good decision, and how do we analyze that economically? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a simple example that goes through this economic decision-making sort of process. So I'm going to give you the example of going to a movie in the theater. All right, so let's say you have the opportunity to go to a movie in the theater. So I'm going to draw a picture. This is, for whatever reason, the movie theater. All right, and so you have the opportunity to attend a movie. And you could go 1, 2, or 3 times, okay, to the same movie. All right, so let's say that movie we watch a lot of Disney in our house, so let's say it's Lion King, just since they made a reboot not too long ago, but let's just say it's Lion King. And you're going to go to that movie 1 time, a second time, or a third time. So you could choose go once, go 2 times, or go 3 times. So I'm going to just give you one bit of information, and I want you to think for a moment whether this was a good decision or not. So let's say you go to the movie 3 times, and the total cost, let's erase that. The total cost for going 3 times is $30. Okay? And the total benefit, or how much value you gained, we would say equals $50. Okay? So by going 3 times, all 3 times, same movie, you valued those 3 visits at $50, and it cost you $30 to go 3 total times. Is this a good choice? So I'm pausing for dramatic effect, but I want you to decide whether this is a good choice. And we could do it differently. Let's say that you run a business and you have to choose how much of a good to produce. So you produce 3 of the good. And the total revenue that you brought in was $50. And the total cost that went out was $30. Was this the right choice? Should you produce 3? Should you go to the movie 3 times? So if I've paused for a long enough of a dramatic effect, the answer right now is we don't know. So we need more information in order to know. So I'm gonna clarify just a little bit. All right. So how I'm gonna clarify is what we're gonna do is we're gonna say that, you know what, we're gonna look at these things one at a time. And so what we call that is marginal analysis. Right? Marginal means it's like the last one. It's the additional one. All right? The additional one. So we assess it one at a time. We assess it marginally. And all microeconomics is continual assessment of one good at a time. Is one more worth it? So I'm gonna give you the full scope of things that should help you fully understand if this was a good decision or not. So let's say you went one time. We're going to call this benefit and this cost for each one. Think individually now. Okay? So you have that one, you have this one, and you have this one. This is the second one. This is the third one. This was the first one. And then you have 3 total, right? So 1, 2, 3 individually, 3 total. So 3 total, we already know what the total is. The total benefit was 50 and the total cost was 30. We need to look at these things one at a time. Otherwise, we have no idea whether this was a good choice or not to go all 3 times, because I could have went 2, I could have went 1. So let's look at the first one. We're going to say the benefit by going the first time was 30 and the cost was 10. Is that worth it? All right, so we're going to check these off over here, whether it was worth it or not. Let's say we go a second time. I've seen the movie once. It's good. It's not great. But I'm going to go again because I enjoy the experience, and I would like to get some clarity to some of the points of the movie that I missed the first time. Value 15, cost 10 again. And then I go a third time. I don't know why. I just went a third time. Now I don't like the movie, really. I've seen it too many times. Valued it at 5, cost 10. So should I go 3 times? Let's look at it like this. Benefit, cost, worth it. Think of this as, would you give up $10 to pick up $30 of value? And the answer would be, obviously, I would. I would give up 10 to get 30. I'm 20 better off by doing that. And then we go to the next one. Would you give up 10 to pick up 15? Yes, obviously you would. But what about this one? Would you give up 10 to pick up 5? The answer is, you would not. So is this 50-30 a good choice? Actually, it isn't. Because what you could actually be gaining is 45 and 20. This actually is a better choice. Why? Because you're up 25, whereas in this scenario, you're only up 20. Now, is it a bad choice? It's not the best choice. The best choice, the best, and what we always try to find is the best. This is going to be our profit max. Right? It's where the marginal benefit is still greater than the marginal cost. And I want to keep doing that as long as that is true. The marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. And in micro, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do marginal analysis over and over and over and over again. You say to yourself, is that last one worth it? And in this scenario, the third time was not worth it. The total showed that going 3 times was worth it, but it actually wasn't. Going 2 times was even better.